Oh my goodness. Now, dude, it's been like 2 weeks since we filmed a video. It looks a little low. If we zoom out and then push this back. Do you guys like the red? It's synonymous with the laws of power that we're doing. So my brilliant idea was this, is if we were to do a big book like this in one video, it wouldn't be doing the book very much justice now, would it? And I wouldn't retain anything that I learned from the book. And so the whole point of the university is so that you can absorb the gold for it to become a part of your personality, to become habit, to become character, and then to become destiny. You can't do that if you read all 48 in one weekend and then you don't retain shit. There's actually a really good quote. It's by Jim Rohn, and he's like, new knowledge isn't necessarily learning something new, it's learning to behave in a way that we have not previously behaved before. So that means I'm trying to map it out to where we read, film, edit, and so it'll be like 2 or 3 days per law. And so we break it apart. It's going to take a very long time, but then we actually get the most absorption from it. Do you know what I'm saying? And I had that brilliant idea for any of the big monster textbooks within this university. Why, if we were to ask ourselves, are we doing this book justice, right? Are we doing ourselves any favors by doing it all in one go? Or if we are able to curb our ego, which is the notion that Route Life University is predicated on, right? The precedent, putting your ego to the side, then I think that'll be good. So we do the book as often as I can get the book done, read, and then we break down a big monster, amazing piece of literature, some of the best literature ever written. And that includes Robert Greene's 48 Laws of Power. Here we go. So I wanted to put a couple of notes that are in the preface of the book before we get into the actual first law. And as you'll see from the title, it is the first law of power. So, if the game of power is inevitable, better to be an artist. That was a quote from me. I just like that one. And then, all right, next. The most important skill, power's crucial foundation, is the ability to master your emotions. Master controlling your emotional response to a stimulation. There's actually a really good quote. It's in Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. When I point this way, those are the books that we've already done in this university. And when I point this way, I have books right here that are to come, that I haven't done yet. I like, it's like a visual win when I can take a book from this side and put it over there. Because there's a ton over here and then there's like a short stack over there. But those are done. 16 books of the university. This is technically book number 18. I'm working right now on Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy, but I did not lose my train of thought. In Man's Search for Meaning, there's a beautiful quote by Viktor Frankl, the Austrian, the Viennese survivor of 4 Nazi concentration camps during the Second World War, and he says, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is your destiny, essentially. As in, it's of lesser importance what happens to you in this life, and of far greater importance what you decide to do about it, how you choose to respond to a situation. Most people, their default software is the victim rhetoric, the victim narrative. This happened to me, not this happened for me. I challenge you, if you're enrolled in this university, to ask yourself, where is this? Why did I need to go through this? Where am I being guided? Those are humbling questions that most people don't have the strength, courage, and humility to propose. Most people like to wallow in self-pity. They like to feel sorry for themselves. They like to bitch and moan and elicit the sympathy dopamine that you get from other people when you sing your woe is me, the smallest violin song. However, if you're in this university, you're not a victim, you're not a bitch, you're a hero of your story who takes full ownership, full responsibility for everything that goes on in your life, not just the wins. If you take credit for the wins, you have to take credit for the failures. And the beauty about that is, I was saying this when I was living in a place, right, before that I was here, and before I was living in my car for those 93 days. and it was a shithole. And I was in the sink of the kitchen. I was washing one of my dishes while cockroaches were coming out of the sink. And I said, this is your fault. And then I just went like this, and through like grated teeth, I was like, but you know what? What's to come, that's your fault too. And that is the beauty of the masculine journey, in the hero's journey, in tandem with that. As in, you get to build your character just like a video in a video game, right? You start from nothing, and you get to, that's the beauty and the hardship of it. You get to build it from the ground up, right? So when you understand all of those things, mental mastery is emotional maturity to stay stoic in an altercation, in a confrontation, in any sort of circumstance, event, situation. As in, this happened to me, you get to choose how you're going to respond to it and not react. It's the biggest difference. And I'm noticing this in the workplace, and we're going to get to this because the first law of power is never outshine the master. And what I've learned from going back to the rat life, from having escaped in years prior when I did rat life, when I did entrepreneurship for the first time, is I developed a very, very high degree of stress tolerance. As in, when I go back to the workplace now, and you get through the facade, the veil of all of the bullshit made up titles that people have, you realize I'll get to this later, but I have a greater stress tolerance than the highest level administrators in this school, in this district office. And that was a big epiphany for me, is when I looked around one day, and I remember because we were talking about some DEI bullshit, right? Some diversity, equity, and inclusion garbage. And I remember looking around because I was the only person with the courage to fucking speak in the entire room. And I would get compliments after from my superiors that, wow, I really admired your courage to be open, to be honest, to speak what everyone else was saying and thinking. And I thought, wait, and it dawned on me that I was the alpha in the organization. And that was weird because I have people 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years my senior who are in levels above me. But I thought about it today when I was doing my cardio, because I just got back from the gym. I did 45 minutes on the stairs after chest and abs, in case you were wondering, because we're 5 weeks out from the EMPTHIS prep. I don't know if you noticed the jawline. We weigh 182 pounds right now, or 183. You know it fluctuates, but but I was thinking about that while I was finishing my cardio. I said, if something were to happen, if shit were to hit the fan, if there was going to be an attacker, and you were to find out who's really about it in the workplace, you'd find out very quickly who people would gravitate towards in terms of who people actually respect to stand at the vanguard amidst trouble, confrontation, battle, right? And it's actually a compliment that I've gotten from the underlings, as they say in the workplace, the grunts, the peasants, the people who are not in the classified or certificated managerial class. And the whole premise of this book, The 48 Laws of Power, is this idea of being a courtier. And anybody who's ever worked a job, you understand that you're wearing a fucking mask when you're going into the rat life. As in, you're laughing at the stupid fucking jokes that people make, and you know that if something were to actually happen, people would only give a shit and be out for their best interests. You find out very quickly who people are when hardship and struggle and adversity arises. Then you see people's true colors. Put somebody under duress, under stress, and then you find out, what their true character is. In the good times, right? It is so easy to be happy and to be cordial and to be positive and to be collaborative and to be cooperative. All of that bullshit goes out the window when hardship, struggle, stress, and adversity arises. And you find out very quickly who is a leader amongst leaders. And so I've found the greatest disdain coming back to the rat life, where I have to wear this stupid fucking mask and I have to pretend like I'm not the alpha in the room. And I have to play this character to the point where, dude, just the other day, I'm just like, I'm so sick of playing this fucking character. This isn't me. You know what I'm saying? And that is We'll get into the idea of depression. It's a choice, and you have to understand that if you're enrolled in this university. Depression is a choice. It's a state as in any other. Jim Carrey articulates it very well. He says, depression is your body saying fuck you to this character that you keep insisting on playing. And when you understand that it is a choice. You get to choose what character that you're playing. So I have to catch myself when I start to begin to get very frustrated or very depressed by the character that I keep insisting on playing based on my environment, based on my job, based on where I live, who I live with, all of these things. And it's so important, that quote from Jim Rohn from one of the first books, stand guard at the doorway of your mind. And in the workplace, predicated on the 48 laws of power, underlined in the whole thing of this idea of you're a courtier, right? You're an actor in a court of other people. And if you want to excel, you have to play the fucking game. And I noticed in this past year that I've been working my position is the older I get, the less patience I have to tolerate bullshit and to not speak. I noticed when I was younger, I was able to bit my tongue far more easily. And I think a lot of it was because I had fear of losing my job. I don't have that fear anymore. So I don't fear any of my superiors, any of them. As in, I don't fear my boss, let alone my boss's boss. And they know that. And because they know that I don't fear them, they know that they can't use any manipulations on me. They know that I'm too sharp for that. And I'll give you a perfect example. The other day I was in my boss's office and she had lied to me the Friday prior, straight to my face. And so I explained to her, I said, do you know, have you ever dropped a glass? And she didn't know where I was going with this. And she said, yes. And I said, have you ever tried gluing it back together? And she was like, no. I said, that's how trust works. And so that is what I went through my weekend, is she lied straight to my face, right? And when you lie to somebody's face, it's very reflective of a lack of respect for that person, because if you respected them, you wouldn't have lied to them. And so going into the following week, the way this person, and by their character, tries to make amends for it, is to use it as a good time to say, hey, I'm gonna give you your salary increase for the year. But somebody like me, who's escaped the rat life and understands and sees it for what it is, understands that the increase that I'm getting from the 9-to-5 rat life, it's not outpacing inflation. You're not giving me shit. So they use that to motivate the sheep, right? That look at this carrot that I'm dangling in front of you to motivate and inspire you. And I didn't even crack a smile during the entire thing because, number one, while she was going through my review of my performance, it was all bullshit, because if their word doesn't mean anything, none of these words mean anything. And so it's very important, and this is a tangent, but the consistency with your character and your integrity founded on your word. And I feel like if that isn't the baseline for who you are as a man, you shouldn't even be in this fucking university to begin with. So to get back on the topic, that's the whole issue with working the 9-to-5. And when you're in a place like me where you lack a certain degree of fear, because I understand what real stress is, what real adversity is, what real hardship is. And until you know what it's like you don't know where your next meal is coming from, you don't know how you're gonna pay rent, you don't know how you're gonna make it to the next day, you don't know the feeling of being injured multiple times and overcoming that and that degree of perseverance, or the mental fortitude you need to have to get through 93 days of living in your car. Like, you haven't played the video game in the areas of the map that I've been. And so it's an unparalleled level of stress tolerance, of perseverance, of belief, of mental fortitude. If you can overcome this level of stress, level of hardship, level of like the lowest of the lows, like I'm talking like the lowest of the lows in terms of your mental health and your mental state, and you're able to persevere through that by yourself, and with the big man upstairs. Until you go through the fire, right, then you're going to be somebody who's able to be emotionally manipulated and fear tacticked against. As in, the sheep who are chasing that fucking carrot, I explained this to my coworker. I said, you're going to blink from a degree of comfortability and it's going to be 10 fucking years from now. As in, if you don't wake up, if you don't understand that it is a carrot, it's an illusion of growth of what you're chasing. If you're getting a 3% salary increase, right, and that's to motivate you to continue to be a slave, while inflation is at 3.5 or higher, then on paper it says you're making more money, but your money isn't even buying you the same amount of groceries, or filling your car up with gas, or getting you any of the same lifestyle as you had when you made less. And so if you can't see through that veil, then you are that fish in the glass bowl, right? You can't escape a prison you don't know that you're in. And so that is the biggest difference between going back to the 9 to 5 and the struggle I have now with my degree of character, of honor, of self-respect, of integrity, to stand idle or to be quiet when I see bullshit, when I see injustice, when I see snakes in the fucking grass, which are my superiors, a lot of them. So, to get back on topic, the most important skill, power's crucial foundation, is the ability to master your emotions, master controlling your emotional response to a stimulation, to a situation. And you're gonna notice that the greater you are on your journey of mental mastery is stoicism. As in, here's the event, I'm not gonna cause it to elevate or to depress me. I learned this lesson when I worked at Target many, many years ago when I was a senior undergrad at UCLA. And there was a woman who came in and she spoke to me horrifically, saying shit you wouldn't dare say outside of Target. And I was fuming. My manager saw that, stepped in, handled it with class, deflected essentially all of the garbage that this person was projecting onto him, and then bid her a good day, left with a smile. I went up to him and I said, how can you let that woman, number one, speak to you like that, and number two, not let it affect the rest of your day? And he said, and I'll never forget it, I think his name was Patricio. He said, it's completely unfair to another guest, that's what Target calls their customers, to allow this person's projection and for me to absorb that and then to in turn project that onto them who had nothing to do with that. How completely unfair to that person, right? And so that is your role as a leader. An amazing leader, right, is under so much stress, but you wouldn't even know it. And they're able to go like this. I don't know if I did it very well, but they could be getting the worst news, right, in their office, and then they open the door, and then they're talking to, they call them CSRs, customer service representatives, like the entry-level position person, and greeting them with a smile. Or when the assistant superintendent talks with a teacher, right, after they just had horrific news about whatever problem in whatever classroom, and then you have to, again, be a courtier. But what it is at the leadership level is a degree of stress tolerance and understanding that this person, you have to be able to be that stoic parent. As in, the worst thing you can do if you're a pilot going through heavy turbulence is freak out over the intercom. Because then what do the passengers do? They freak the fuck out, right? As the leader, you have to be stoic. It's the same thing with parenting. As in, if your kid is freaking out, and then you start to freak out as the parent, dude, the kid's gonna think they're gonna die. But if the kid falls, it's a perfect analogy for this, right? Between stimulus and response, there's a space, right? When a kid falls, what's the first thing that they do? They look to mom and dad to see their response. If mom and dad freak out, rush over, or worried, the kid cries. But there's a space where the kid will hold their emotion, gauge how they're supposed to react, and if the parent is like laughing, whatever, then they get back up unscathed. I know that for a fact because when I was in Milan, in Italy, I was doing pull-ups on the jungle gym, and these kids were using my gym. And the kid wanted me to help him up, and so I did. I helped him up, and then he fell. And I didn't catch it because I thought he had it. And then, so he fell, and then he looked at me, and I just chuckled, and I laughed. It's kind of nervous laughter, but he didn't know that. I thought I really fucked him up. And then he got up, smiled, and then I extended my hand, he gave me a high five, and then he jolted off, right? That is the exact same thing as a leader in the workplace. You need to have that stoic emotional control. Then you begin to master your emotions. Okay. The first law of power: never outshine the master. All masters want to appear more brilliant than other people. Make your master outshine all others. Now, the issue that I face in my current position, like I started this video with, is it's very evident between me and my current master, and everyone in the workplace knows that there's a really good quote from the movie Braveheart, right? And he says, your title gives you the throne, right? It grants you the keys to the throne, right? But men don't follow titles, they follow courage. And my superior is such a cuck, he's such a pussy, he's such a coward, that nobody respects him. No one. No one that he oversees respects him in the slightest. And the issue is, he knows that. And people respect me because my actions are very consistent with my word. And so when you have this degree of character, of self-respect, of integrity, of merit, of honor, of all these merits that are in Rat Life University, and then you have a master who's a fucking coward, who's only out for their self-interest, who's a fucking weasel, a snake in the grass, and everyone knows it, and they're such a professional at manipulation that they're able to, like the courtier from somebody who's a professional at this book, at the laws instilled in this literature, you elicit zero respect from any of the people who you're the supposed superior to the point where I was confronted by him very early on about being hired. And it was one of those things where literally over the phone, well, you know, he's my boss, but then we both have our real boss, right? And then she has a boss. It's all, you know, that little, you know, pyramid of slavery. And he literally said over the phone that he was scared from me having a conversation with him man to man. Like he literally said that verbatim. He was like, I'm afraid right now. And you talk about respect for your leader, to be too much of a coward to be able to have an honest conversation predicated on the truth. You're just like, what the fuck are we talking about? To the point where he'll literally go up to me to ask me to do a task like this, like with, you know, like uncertainty and hesitation and fear when they're my director. And so I make that mistake when I'm in the workplace with any dreams to elevate by consistently outshining the master. And there's actually, I'll read it right now. You may naturally outshine them by your charm and grace. As in, if you have such a high degree of personal agency, personal ownership, self-respect, character, and charisma and professionalism, you could outshine them just by existing. And so people with a high degree of insecurity with that, and people who are the most snakes and the most weasels, they're very, very observant of everyone else. And so I know when he does stupid little jabs to see how much he can get away with. And I learned this when I worked at Amazon. Again, when I returned back to the rat life and I couldn't get an interview to get into a school district, I said, I need a fucking job. I'm never gonna be able to repay this debt from starting rat life on loan. And so I took a graveyard shift at Amazon, and there were these runts who would speak to me with such disrespect. And I did a mental 180. I didn't understand it. I said, what the fuck is wrong with you? You're half my size. I could literally murder you. Why are you speaking to me with such disrespect? You have no idea who I am. I could be an axe murderer. And I learned there a sentiment from Andrew Tate. And he said this, the best way to earn the respect from your peers is to simply not tolerate disrespect. And you find out so quickly how so many men are such cowards and such pussies when you stand up to them for the first time. and you see how quickly their bark, it's from a Chihuahua, right? It's kind of like a jackal when they circle a lion, right? There's a quote from, I forget his name. He talks like this. I don't know the actor's name. It's Christopher Walken. And he was talking about the story of the lion and the jackals, where they become more bold and they start biting him, they start eating his food, and he said eventually until the lion just has to fucking tear them up, kill them all, right? Just destroy the fuck out of them. The premise is that even if you're the lion, you have to remind them why you're the king of the jungle sometimes. And I've always found that premise frustrating because I was raised after 10 by a single mother. And so I was taught to speak with people with courtesy, consideration, and respect, not to disrespect them, to see how much disrespect that they'll tolerate, so then I could then earn their respect. It's fucking stupid, it's childish, and it's bred in this generation of very weak, retarded men. And I use men very loosely. And I noticed it today at the gym, not to go on a tangent, but I just sat there on my pec deck machine, training chest, nice, I like it, and I heard slam, 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 slam. And I thought there's a video of this girl, she's eating a pickle, or no, she's drinking pickle juice. Have you ever seen it? And she's like, who raised these boys? That's exactly what I thought. I said, I shared this with my brother Tamara. I said, it's very, very evident by the generation of pathetic boys that they weren't raised in a generation of Greg Plitt who take pride in the little things, such as not slamming your fucking weights in the gym, you insect, as in having character, having respect, having consideration for others. It's a lost sentiment. And so it's like that in the workplace. It's the exact same thing. And when you see somebody void of those, I would assume natural, you'd like to think they're natural virtues, but they're not. And so they do that stupid shit. They do that disrespect test. And women do it, shit test, but guys do it. And for guys, there's the underlying notion of violence. And so when guys do it, they're playing a very fucking dangerous game because you can get checked. And I remember when I earned the respect of somebody who was once my adversary in Amazon. And again, he was saying stupid shit. And I had a long day, man. Like, I was taking the bus at the time, so I was on like a 24 or 36 hour shift. I was also dieting. I was like a skeleton. And so I was just on fumes. It's when I actually developed my virtue of indefatigability, I attributed to working at Amazon. That's what I say when life happens for you. Graveyard shift, working a less than minimum wage job, but it forged my never say die, indefatigable perseverance, right? Relentless work ethic. And this motherfucker was disrespecting the fuck out of me, and I laughed and I just said, shut the fuck up. And I like smiling and in that exasperated, like, you know, do something about it kind of thing. And it was on that day, from that statement, that he then became a friend. And we were actually very good friends until I stopped working there. And there's an interview with Shaq and Kobe where he does the same thing, where Shaquille would purposefully bully other people, including Kobe, to see how much disrespect that they would tolerate, to see when they would stand up for themselves. My oldest brother was the same way. He was such a bully, but that's the only way that he would you would earn his respect, is from you standing up for yourself. And I have hated that precedent. I've hated that premise. And it's always from the smallest and the weakest men who feel the need to do that, the most insecure. Because if you had a high degree of security, you wouldn't be doing any of that bullshit to begin with. So, to tie it all back, you'll find that in the workplace of these Chihuahua fucking cucks who outside of the job, they wouldn't do any of this bullshit. But weak men feel a degree of power when they play these stupid little disrespects upon others, particularly if they do it in a public setting, where you disrespect someone else in front of other people, which this person had the gall to do. And it's like, there's a line that you don't cross, because especially when you're combated with or confronted with someone who doesn't have fear of losing his job, then that's when you're on thin ice of what could happen. Not saying it would ever happen, but you're opening that door. And we'll just leave it there. Okay, to move on. Make your master shine. Outshine all others. And this battery's gonna die, so we're going to replace it. All right, nice. I'm gonna try to do this, my best to cap this out at 1 hour. I would really like each one to be, because the whole goal is I want to try to learn the law for myself. And I want each of the laws, such as number 1, never outshine the master, excuse me, to become a part of my habit, my character, so that I can become the best. For the quote, life is not about what you get, it's about who you become and what you're able to give others now that you've become more. So, make your master outshine all others. Idea of saving face. Like I said, the public humiliation and disrespect, that's the worst. And that's what most men won't tolerate. And so I've made that mistake a lot. And it comes from the book by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, where never, and they even say, Harvey Specter in the show Suits, he says it, never destroy someone in public when you can achieve the same thing in private. You should always allow a person to save face, to not be fucking publicly humiliated, particularly men. That is how you get the workplace or school shooters. It's from disrespect, especially in a public setting. And so, and in terms of tying it into how to win friends and influence people, even if you win, even if you're right, you lose them as a friend. You lose them, like, guys fuck this up with women all the time, where they need to, prove to the woman that they're right and the woman's wrong, and then they end up losing the woman that they're trying to sleep with or get a date with. And so understand that, like, are you actually winning from the need of being right? And the answer is 99+% of the time, no, right? With that 1% being candor, when another person needs to understand the truth of the matter, for them to grow and learn. Not for you, with your ego and your arrogance, to stroke your ego, to look like the big G in the group, when you actually appear to be the smallest person. When other people see you with that need to win the moment. Or if some person makes a joke and then you try to one-up them. It's, you just appear smaller and you lose respect of all of your peers in everybody's eyes. So, allow for saving face. Work, courtiering, my experience, I shared that. And like I said, it's been the biggest frustration for me personally, working the 9 to 5, constantly playing that fucking character, man. Because I know who I am, I know what makes me happy, I know what my morals are, I know that I speak the truth, I know everything that I say is predicated on character, merit, honor, integrity, self-respect. And so when I see bullshit, when I see passive aggression, when I see manipulation, it fucking sickens me, and it's very insulting to my intelligence. And I'm not somebody, like I said, with that fear of losing my fucking 9 to 5 job. I can always get another job. And a lot of people who have never escaped the rat life, and they're conditioned from the indoctrination that they've grown up in through going to school, they're conditioned to not speak the truth. That's what they want, the system at large. They want the mass of people to be so afraid to speak against tyranny. And it's very important that you are consistent and aligned with who you are. And so I know myself. I'm the kind of person that if I see a woman I like, I go up to her and I let her know. I'm the kind of person that if I see bullshit, I don't stand idle. There's a really good quote that the way tyranny stands is that good men stand idle. There's a quote from one of the survivors from the Holocaust that said, "We were always asked why we never fought back." I shared this in a previous lecture. And he said, but it didn't happen all at once. It was just a little thing. And so anytime they implemented something new, we all said, it's just a little thing, another one of those little things, until it wasn't. And so that's so important that when you see bullshit, when you see injustice, when you see manipulation, when you see other people being snakes, weasels, fucking rats, that you call that shit out. Not for the sake of them, but for you to confirm who you are to yourself. And I do that for myself because it's like, no, this is who I am. When I see bullshit, I speak up because that's Tarek Hawks. So that would be my food for consideration, my food for thought. You may naturally outshine them by your charming grace. You see this all the time. Never take your position for granted and never let any favors you receive go to your head. And you see that particularly in the workplace, particularly in business, when someone gets a little too comfortable. But you have to understand, there's a good quote from the Joker in The Dark Knight, and he's like, you know, they all smile and they all get along, but when the chips are down, they'll eat each other. And I've noticed that in business relationships and in workplace relationships particularly, that everybody's fucking kumbaya, but until the person is no longer serving this leader's best interests, as in as soon as you're not producing, as soon as you're not earning, then they don't give a fuck about you and they won't hesitate to replace you in a heartbeat. So you have to also have that lens, and that's such a gift when I get disrespect or when I get lied to in the workplace. It's such a good reminder. And so to not be emotionally attached to a place that would replace you in a fucking week if you drop dead. If you drop dead tomorrow, they would replace you in a fucking week. So you're slaving away for a rat job that would replace you in a fucking heartbeat. And so people who lose sight of that, dude, they blink and it's 10 years from now, and then you realize, dude, I was a slave for my entire life. So it's so important that, number one, you don't take your position for granted. You don't get too comfortable. But number two, you don't lose sight of why you're there in the first place, which is a different tie-in, but it's also very relevant. Next. Disguise your strengths, let others outshine you. I have to do that shit all the time. Again, this is my frustration with being a courtier. I constantly have to play the fool. I constantly have to do it. And it's so frustrating. Like when you're walking around pretending, you have to pretend like you know less than you know to not make the others feel insecure. Or if I know someone, it's like this. I have people who don't have the same level of stoicism, don't have the same level of emotional maturity, control. They react, they don't respond, and they don't have a high degree of stress tolerance. I do all of these calculations in my head, understanding their emotional capacity, and so I understand how to engage with them to play the fool, the oblivious, so I don't know any better, to better navigate through the interaction with that person. Because if I were to be direct, if I were to be, all these things, it would cause their cortisol to elevate, it would cause them to yell and to project and do all this bullshit. And so I can't tell you how many times I've gotten exactly what I wanted from the person by playing the fool, by feigning ignorance, by doing all these things, whether that's a superior, whether that's somebody who I oversee. And so again, I understand it, and you're gonna learn all these tenets from all of these laws, from all of these lectures, but it's also something that I derive so much frustration towards because it's all bullshit at the end of the day. Everyone's playing a fucking character. It's all a courtier, right? Everyone's a courtier in the workplace, whether they admit it or not. So disguise your strengths, let others outshine you. And dude, I do that all the time, like in any aspect of it, whether that's work related or whether they're talking about fitness and dieting or anything that I've mastered over the course of the past going on. This will be my 11th year with my personal fitness journey and transformation progression. And so you constantly have to do that. You constantly have to say and speak less than you know, but it is a sign of a powerful person that they speak only as needed, which is probably a future law to come. So don't say everything that you know. Be stoic, be mysterious, withhold, let others shine in the light, right? Constantly defer credit, constantly assume blame and ownership and responsibility, but defer credit for the wins, take ownership for all the failures, losses, mistakes, and that is how you'll become a made man. Next, you can have everything you want, so this ties in with it. It's actually a quote from Zig Ziglar, See You at the Top, which will be a book probably in next semester. You can have everything you want so long as you're not willing to take the credit. You're okay not taking the credit. We actually have a little bit more notes. There's only one more thing in this. This is a lesson. Oh, I love this because the whole premise of this law is, I have to remember it, never outshine the master. This is a lesson that the stars in the sky teach us. And I love this quote, that's why I wrote it down. They may be related to the sun and just as brilliant, but they never appear in her company. And I thought that was so cool. And you'll find that if you do your job right, you'll find any project or any collaboration with anybody, particularly with your superiors, it'll be seamless. As in, it'll be so fluid that they won't even know that 100 other people went into it and all work. I'll give you a perfect example. We had this event called Legacy and Luminaries, that it was the idea of my superintendent, and to bring back all past employees and retirees and anyone who had longevity working there for decades. And the highest person, they will work there for over 40 years. And at the end of it, or actually all throughout the event, the superintendent, the leader of the organization, constantly got all of the great idea, congratulations, and as he should, because it was his idea. However, he did a leadership meeting following where he sat everybody down and then he said, they say thank you, thank you, thank you to me because they know me. They don't know any of you. And that's when you're one of those stars who you're never seen in the company of the sun. And so that's when you've done your job, right? Is to make your leader shine so bright by your killing it, right? And a lot of that work goes unseen, particularly in the workplace, particularly by the people who aren't in that managerial or administrative cabinet level. So that is the end. That's the first law of power. So I had that insight when I was drafting the syllabus of the university, and I said, my whole goal with this, number one, is to plant the seed of belief within others. Number two is to give people the key, right? The key to their escape, the key to their freedom forever. That's the whole premise of Rat Life University, right? Anyone can escape. It starts with belief and the courage to pursue Rat Life. We're all gonna make it. And so when I was going over the syllabus and I was going over the books that I'm able to do while still working a full-time job and doing a ton of other things, I was like, it wouldn't be doing me any favors to give less than I could by me not becoming as much as I could. And so I had a great idea that I shared with Ricardo. I was like, what if we did our book? I would like to do a book a week, but again, it's something that I'm actually struggling with in real time, because I can read a book in a week, no problem, if it was to just check off a box. But I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to actually absorb the material. And then as a result, you become more. Life, it's not about what you get, it's about who you become. So it's never the target or the goal or the achievement or the result that should be your actual goal. It's the person you need to become in order to achieve that goal or target. Jim Rohn said it perfectly. Set a goal to become a millionaire, not for the $1 million, for what it will make of you in order to achieve it. It's the same thing that I'm doing with this university. As in, I'm not reading 1,000 books to stroke my ego and said I read 1,000 books. It's what kind of man do I become by reading the 1,000 books? And not to read them for the sake of reading them, to read them, to reflect on them, to extract all of the gold and the actionables from them, to implement them, to teach them, and then to better understand it for myself by my articulation. And that is how I'm going to become my villain, which was the title of semester 2, right? That's how I'm going to be able to close the gap between who I am and the potential of who I can be. And so that is what I would encourage any of you guys is, I'm so glad one of the first books was Acres of Diamond by Russell Conwell, because of the single quote, "Let patience have her perfect work." And so anybody else can say, yeah, I've read it. And then you ask him, okay, what are the 48 laws? How have you applied them? How has your life become better from any, testament to any of these tenets, right? Because I know people who have read books, who have read dozens, maybe hundreds of books. I don't know any personally, but if they don't apply it, they haven't learned shit. If it doesn't seep from words to your character, to your habit, I'm butchering the sequence, but basically you learn something and then you put it into practice until it becomes your habit, and then that becomes your character, and then that becomes your destiny. I did not butcher it. That's exactly how it goes. And so it's the same thing that I'm trying to do with the books, particularly all of Robert Greene's books, because these are my favorite ones. Not only does he have all of these amazing time-tested laws, principles which Ray Dalio wrote a book about that. Principles, as in when all the bullshit subsides in this weak modern world, what is very consistent and what stands the test of time is truth and principle. These are laws, natural laws, proven from, he said, 3,000 years of historical examples. And I love that so much. And so to give myself, for myself to extract the most out of these books and to give you guys the most out of these books, we're gonna break it down one law at a time and do the job right. We're gonna let patience have her perfect work. And with that, that is the first law, power, by Robert Greene. Never outshine the master. This is Rat Life University. We are all gonna make it.